Welcome to the Leading at the Next Level podcast with Dove Development Consulting, the show built to provide ongoing support for your leadership journey. Before we move into today's lesson, let's make sure we're on the same page. We've seen firsthand how much more is required to provide authentic leadership to a team than to simply manage based on the authority that comes with the title or position. What we've learned through more than 50 combined years of leadership responsibility is that taking the extra steps to serve people and earn influence will always produce results that barking orders never will. If you stick with us to the end of the episode, we'll share how you can get a complimentary trial resource that we've built that's like nothing else you've ever seen. With that in mind, let's get to work. This episode continues down the path of the idea of what's killing your profitability, and we're going to take a look at some of the high-risk areas, starting with some of the most common misunderstandings you're going to see in the workplace. I'm in the middle of a sunshine daydream. An article that I found from managementissues.com. It opened with this quote. It said, "Listen up. I'll say this only once. Misunderstandings between workers and managers cost firms $37 billion a year, yet few firms trouble to do anything about it." Now, another article that I found around that same time from the Society of Human Resource Management cited a lady named Debra Hamilton as estimating these same costs to companies of just 100 employees at an average of $420,000 a year. Now, while the idea of misunderstandings lends itself to poor communication, and will certainly be addressing that more specifically soon, that's definitely not the only way that misunderstandings are killing our profitability. While I had significant responsibility for hiring in the last several full-time roles I had with organizations, and gosh, even in the work that we do today, it's been rare to see organizations have so many highly skilled individuals on their staff that they aren't at least passively looking for great talent. I've just never seen it. Usually people are looking and saying, hey, if somebody's good, we'll find a place for them. Now, in the toughest scenarios, I've seen the high demand for talent, if you will, push managers and business owners to do what almost resembled performance CPR, and that was kind of checking to see if they had if they were breathing and if they had even the slightest pulse whatsoever, even if they weren't breathing, before they offered a candidate a job. And my goodness, that sometimes is a challenge. In fact, I remember one time where I was hiring for a particular skilled trade, and the manager that I was supporting, he comes to me and he says, Hey, Wes, I need to have no less than 7 new employees for this specific position in the next 5 days. Now, I just happened to be holding all of the applications that we had at that point that were current, that we'd not processed through and either hired or whatever. And it was only 5, 2 of which I explained to him right then and there that maybe we should consider a restraining order, not a job offer, if you know what I'm saying. And I handed him those, and he looked through them, and he agreed with me about the 2, and the other 3 says, I tell you what, just do the best you can with what you've got to work with, and I'll take it. So he decided at that point, maybe those needs weren't quite as urgent as finding 7 in the next 5 days based on what we had to work with. Now, he and I didn't see eye to eye on everything, but that was really one case where he chose not to sacrifice at least some level of quality for his real pressing need, and it was pressing, to fill the open spots that he had. Now, unfortunately, a number of the decisions the management team that he was a part of that they had made in the last 12 months or so that was leading up to that conversation, it had drastically changed the approach that we had to take to really find candidates and even maintain a decent culture with the folks who were already there. And that really opens the door to one of the biggest misunderstandings I've seen organizations make, and that's prioritizing the immediate need for a certain skill set over the importance of ensuring that the person with those skills has similar values. So we can definitely plug a hole in the short term with somebody who's got a relevant skill set. But a mismatch on values, or even, gosh, if we don't make sure that the company values are clearly understood from day one, that can kill profitability for the duration of a working relationship. It's not just a short-term impact on profitability. It can be the whole time that working relationship exists. Now, having even the slightest focus on values from the start can really provide a foundation for everything else that we do moving forward. And it can help us capture that profit that can really otherwise be lost completely. Now, once we've nailed that down, we can call attention to what's likely hanging on the wall in our lobby or somewhere prominent, but nobody really considers on a routine basis, which makes it our next high risk area that actually is pretty simple to address when we get right down to it. So even when we begin to recognize what's killing our profitability, we start to dial in on the right prescription that we need to address it with, and we come up with some simple solutions that can have a strong impact. We'll miss capturing a significant amount of our best potential results if we allow our team to remain confused about one thing that poses such a high risk. Now, we have to make sure that every single individual in our organizations understands exactly how they contribute to the company's mission and vision. Now, make no mistake, this isn't as simple as just them knowing where it's printed, maybe in a handbook or in a frame somewhere in the lobby. It's critical that they connect the specific tasks that they're responsible for on a daily basis to achieving that mission and vision. We can't leave it to guesswork. Now, before we dig into any statistics proving how important this really is, I challenge you to consider how having that kind of clarity in the work that you're doing impacts your own performance. Now, when it comes right down to it, when it comes down to even how even the most mundane tasks tie back to the perfectly crafted mission statements we often see in a company's lobby, in the frame or in a handbook or whatever, or even the tagline, the vision statements, taglines that are printed on shirts and business cards, or gosh, maybe it's even the values that we expect team members to live up to. Aren't you and I more willing to really go an extra mile when we've got a clear understanding of exactly why what we're doing matters? Now, as Cindy and I were talking through this not so long ago, neither of us could really point to a single company that we had worked for any time in our career that had ever provided us with that type of clarity, nothing that really even resembled it. Now, while I'd like to think that we still performed well beyond what we were expected to do in our respective roles, I can't help but believe that having that type of crystal clear understanding of how even the crappiest work that we had to do made an impact on anybody else would have inspired even better performance than what we were already given, right? Assuming that you can relate to that, even if it's just a little bit, if you're being completely honest, and considering that we're likely in leadership roles, and that's why we're here together in this format, how much more important is it that we provide that clarity for the individuals that are counting on us to lead them? Now, when we invest the time and the energy into being intentional about connecting those dots for our team members, I can guarantee you that we'll soon see the results. Now, this one simple thing, but not necessarily easy, is something that can have a direct impact on several of the things that really are killing our profitability. We'll work through things like engagement more specifically soon, but I want you to just consider this statement from, it's a short one that I found with the Harvard Business Review in an article there not so long ago. It said organizations with a higher level of engagement report 22% higher productivity. I'm going to say it again in case you missed it. Organizations with a higher level of engagement report 22% higher productivity. My goodness, as Cindy and I just earlier this week talked with 50 or so different organizational executives and business owners, we talked about the importance of that profitability, of that productivity, and how it really drives profit margin. And I just can't understand why we would want to let that slip away. When we know why the work we're doing matters to the company as well as the people that we serve, I'll ask you, isn't it easier for us to engage? And if that's true for us, it's just as important to provide that kind of understanding for the teams that we're leading to earn their engagement. And I'll stress earn their engagement and thereby drive productivity. And that's exponentially easier when we're speaking the right language. So let's really address that before we move on to a change that we'll likely need to make in how we approach those things. Once we've been intentional about providing each and every one of our team members with that really clear understanding of how each specific task they're doing, whether they like it on any given day or not, it really ties back to the mission, the vision, and even the values. We should certainly be seeing them buying in at a higher level. But that's not always as simple as reading it from a script. The message that we need to send is going to be received so much better if we're able to make it personal. Now, earlier I referenced a SHRM article that shared a study showing poor communication, the 100-person, the over $400,000 a year in a 100-person company. In lesson 2 of our Emerging Leader Development course, I shared details from an SIS international research study that said the cumulative cost per year due to productivity losses resulting from communication barriers is more than $26,000 per employee. That same study goes on to say not only that, it found that a business with 100 employees spends an average downtime of 17 hours a week clarifying communications. Translated into dollars, that's more than $530,000 a year. Now, regardless of which one you look at, miscommunication is clearly a profitability killer that we need to give our attention to because those are big dollars. But just like talking louder or maybe repeating the same words again and again, it isn't necessarily helpful if somebody doesn't have a frame of reference of what we're saying, or gosh, maybe if they speak a different language. You ever seen that? Somebody doesn't understand us and we just talk louder. I remember years ago, a friend says, a peeler, because somebody didn't know what a peeler was. He was talking about a potato peeler, and it was just a funny story. But even today, our son, he works on generators and he does all this technical stuff, and I have no earthly idea what he's talking about. And he repeats it and tells me the same thing again. And I'm like, well, I didn't understand you the first time, and you're telling me the same thing. So just pretend like I do, and let's move on to the point. Now, here's the thing. When we're doing that, gosh, wouldn't it make sure that wouldn't it be important for us to make sure that they're really tracking with us? And I believe it's very critical that we do. And in case it's not enough of a challenge to deal with, consider, if I've not given you enough stats or enough financial reason, enough profitability killer reason, if you will, to consider it, I want you to think about what John Maxwell shared in the first page of his book in 2010, Everyone Communicates Few Connect. He said, we're bombarded with 35,000 messages a day, which quite honestly, as I'll take a quick rabbit trail, I'll say in 2010 to where we're at today, more than a decade later, I can only imagine that number is significantly higher because of all the technology and the way it's permeated every aspect of our lives and so on. Makes it even harder. It's got to be more messages. He went on to say, most people speak 16,000 words each day. Now, when we've got all those things, those 35,000 or more messages a day, and we've got all those words coming at us from different people, it's clear that just repeating ourselves with more volume, saying it louder, is not necessarily going to be enough to overcome all the issues leading to miscommunication. Now, if we want to be really serious about helping our folks, the folks on our teams, know how and why their jobs matter, I'm convinced that our best shot really lies in tailoring our communication directly to them so they can receive it. So our message really stands out from all that other noise that's going on around them. Now, nearly everyone I meet knows some level or some version of the golden rule: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Now, I don't care what religion you subscribe to, there's some solid advice, right? Except when it comes to eliminating misunderstandings. Now, just as an example, I tend to focus on the big picture, right? And I'll work through the details as needed if I absolutely have to along the way, or once I've got through and got some results, I can go back and fix it. Now, when I take that approach into running Ideas by Cindy, though, I can really overwhelm her in a hurry. She typically is working to deliver precision in everything that she does, and she'll think through all the possible scenarios up front, and she'll plot a very strategic path to follow. So for me to just assure her that I'll circle back and explain those details once the task is complete, that does not give her what she needs to understand where I think we should be headed. Sometimes it can create a tremendous amount of stress between us. Rather than me communicating with her like I want her to communicate with me, give me the big picture, get to the point, don't bore me with the details, I'll ask if I need to know more. Rather than me doing that nonsense to her, I've learned that we can work so much more effectively together when I follow what I've come to know as the platinum rule, and I can communicate with her like she needs me to, not like I'm wired to communicate, not like I'd want her to communicate with me, the way she needs me to. So to make sure each member of our teams have a reasonable chance that they can ever see that big picture, how their work really ties into that mission, the vision, and the values, there's some simple things that we can apply, which we're going to work through in significant detail soon, to keep misunderstandings from really killing our profitability in those areas. Now, but we're not going to achieve that if we take the wrong approach. Thanks for listening to the Leading at the Next Level podcast. Next time, we'll pick up where we left off by beginning to dig into what happens when we've got the wrong focus. If you'd like to dig deeper into anything that we've shared here, or you need continuing education credits for your professional credential, send us an email at admin@dove-development.net, and we'll be happy to hook you up with a 45-day all-access trial to our complete Leading at the Next Level program at no cost. The full program includes access to well over 100 hours of digital lessons, complete with slides and action-based assessments to help you capture measurable bottom line improvements in your organization, and 2 live lessons each month with Q&A, so we can help you identify the specific action you want to take to lead your team more effectively.